Welcome to Be Undaunted. This is the podcast that helps you lead stronger, elevate your impact, and live with more energy.
I'm George Dom, former Navy fighter pilot, Blue Angels flight leader, and corporate executive.
And I'm Tara Collingwood, performance dietitian to Olympians, CEOs, and everyday people that are just under pressure. If you're ready to grow, to strengthen your leadership, and to reclaim your energy.
If you want to feel more intentional, more capable, and yes, more undaunted, you're in the right place.
Hello and welcome to Be Undaunted. We're so excited that you're here.
Oh, today we got our first guest, Tara.
This is a big one, absolutely. And we don't start with just any slacker guest, of course. So let me introduce you to our guest. Our guest is Ryan Stramrood. He is, of course, a successful businessman, internationally sought after motivational speaker. And he started, like most of us, as a just sort of ordinary, humble person, father. But his journey that he's going to share with us is anything but ordinary. He was a couch potato in his 30s. He went from there to setting multiple Guinness World Records, pushing his body and mind to places that were largely believed to be impossible when it comes to ultra open water swimming and extreme temperatures ice swimming. So if you need to warm up, we understand while we're talking to him about the cold. He has swum in Siberia, Antarctica, the Bering Sea, the Great White Feeding Ground of False Bay and South Africa. Most importantly, the reason why we want to talk to him is he has really unlocked this unique understanding of the mind of how to push past impossible, which is the name of his book. So we are so excited to have you today, Ryan, coming to us from South Africa. So
Indeed.
Welcome.
Well, thank you so much. And I'm super stoked and happy to be guest number one. Thank you. How exciting.
Awesome. So I think the first obvious question is, all right, you come, like I said in the intro, from this, I was a normal guy in my 30s, just hanging out, doing my thing. And then all of a sudden, what bit you? What hit you? What got you into extreme ice cold swimming?
Tara, the first thing, you definitely don't wake up one morning and decide you want to be an ice swimmer or do extreme swimming. So it didn't happen like that. It's a much more boring story. And it's literally, I was getting fat and lazy at the age of 29. So just before I turned 30, running a business really well at advertising brokerage and, doing really cool on that side of the fence, but nothing else. And, thinking I'm living quite an exciting life, but not. And I took a client away one day, it was on an incentive trip, and we were sitting having a beer on our patio, and I was moaning to him that I'm getting fat and lazy and feeling a bit useless outside of business. After a few beers had kicked in, and he said, well, why don't you join my little swimming squad on Monday that I'm part of? And of course, being a client, you say, yes, I'm in. And then Monday morning rolls on and you go, oh no, did I seriously commit to that? But now he's waiting for me there. So I had to get up and off I went, found a Speedo and some goggles and joined this little swimming squad. I hadn't swum for maybe 15 odd years, properly, obviously swim in the sea recreationally. And that's how the journey started. Believe it or not. I can go on about it because I managed to do 20 laps of a 25-meter pool, which is 27 odd yards. And of course, you have to choose the lane you arrive at this squad. Now, there are a whole bunch of people. You feel completely out of sorts. The coach says, yeah, sure, you can join. Pick your lane. That's the slow lane. That's the medium lane, all the way up to the fast lane. So now where are you going to go? You're standing there with your speed and your towel. So I go into the second fastest lane, as I thought that looked about my pace. And in you get, and your first 4 laps you feel bulletproof, and you think, well, this isn't so hard. And then all of a sudden, on that 4th tumble turn, you go, whew. But now, now there are a whole bunch of guys behind you, and you kind of set the pace, and you're trying to show off how cool you are. So I try to keep that pace, and 20 laps, which is half a kilometer later, I had to pull out and had to secretly go and have a little vomit behind the car. I pushed so hard, and I was so unfit. So yeah, that's how it started. But something made me go back, and yeah, fascinating journey started from there.
So you went back to the pool, but yeah. I have recently, in the past couple of years, become a triathlete, and I went from pool swimming to lake swimming. And let me tell you that it is ridiculously different because in a pool, you've got clear water, you've got a black line under you, you've got nothing to worry about. You get into a lake or an ocean and you can't see anything.
100%.
Plus, the temperature is a little bit different, and especially the ocean in South Africa. So I would love to know what the transition was from, okay, my first time in the pool, I got my butt kicked, but then how did you go over to swim in oceans?
Yeah, totally. So the very first, and it was very unusual, but the very first move, which I want to go back before we get to the ocean, is that I got up again the next morning and I went back, despite a really embarrassing and difficult situation. That's a big move we can talk about. But a lot of your listeners will have heard of Robben Island. That's where Nelson Mandela spent, I think, 17 of his 27 years incarcerated. And it's an island that sits out in Table Bay. It's about 4.5 miles to the closest beach, and it's surrounded by some very daunting waters, which are very cold. And I met someone the second time I went to this little swimming squad who had actually swum from Robben Island in a Speedo, no wetsuit, all the way to the beach, which is called Bloberg Beach. And I, up until this point, had only read about people who did this kind of thing. They were way above me on a pedestal that I couldn't even imagine. And here I was in the same lane, in the same swimming squad as this cool dude, right? And as I went back to the squad, I got to know him, and I realized, I started to ask him a little bit about the challenge and what he saw, and like how on earth can you be out there for so long without touching the ground, nowhere to put your feet. You all by you got a support boat, but if you touch it, you're disqualified. So if you're going to try and do it, you got to do it without any assistance, in a Speedo, goggles, and one silicone cap. And that
now, let me interrupt you. When you say so long, can you please tell us how long it takes for an average person to do this swim?
An average person's going to take about 2.5 hours to swim it. Now, that might not sound like all eternity, but it's cold water. So if you're not protected, that cold, we're going to talk a lot about the cold, I'm sure. That sinks in and it creates a whole bunch of interesting stuff. Anyway, to get back, so I don't go too long to answer a simple question. He eventually challenged me to take on Robben Island. This is now once I got a little bit fitter. And when he said those words, and it wasn't just him challenging me, a few others said, hey, you're the kind of guy, you've progressed enough in the squad, you should set yourself a challenge like that. And I honestly thought it was just ridiculous. But you can see where it's going, and I eventually did set that challenge and worked my way up to it in a short space of time and ended up doing my first swim in the ocean. But I couldn't go from the pool to the ocean. I had to transition into that cold water and start to understand its impact on my body and on my mind and how it all works. And I got the first Robben Island crossing done. I did it in like 2 hours and 13 minutes. And absolutely changed my world, which I realized was very small at the time. And I had completely doubted in ever having the ability to do something that cool. I only read about those cool people who do it. And here I've done it. And it sparked a train of thought for me for the very first time. And I've been selling myself short many times in swimming. I was very focused on swimming. I didn't have a massive epiphany that my life is now different, but it pinged to say, why did you doubt yourself for so long? Yet you've just done this. It wasn't that hard. I did it. I trained well enough and I got it right. Like the first time many people don't. Yet I had, and it just started a train of thought and a confidence in me. It took a long time to be called real confidence, but when you're starting off a low base, even just a little bit of street cred, because now I'm a Robben Island swimmer, and your shoulders are back a little bit and you start to integrate in a community of swimmers, and they're all like, wow, you did that. You only started swimming 6 months ago. And you start to feel, well, maybe there's a little more to this. And that's how my cold water journey started. And all the water is cold around Cape Town. So every time I get into the ocean, I get cold. So it's not like I chose the cold water. If it was all warm up, this journey probably would never have happened. So I think I do owe it a debt of gratitude.
Ryan, I really enjoyed reading your book. And
great.
You're the perfect guest to have on for us, our first one with the theme of being undaunted. I mean, just amazing to read about all your accomplishments and, reading about how you prepared to swim the English Channel and just the hours and hours and hours of preparation and swimming every day and so forth. I got to ask sort of a mundane question. In golf, they talk about a swing thought, and psychologists talk about self-talk. What do you think about as you're in the pool or for hours and hours?
Yeah, I've been doing this a long time, and I tell you, I still wish I had. I wish I could just let my mind go and kind of all of a sudden, I finished my training session. That was wonderful. But it doesn't work like that. I'm always in the moment. And I'm always, when I'm training, I'm thinking of what I'm trying to achieve. A lot of my training gets done in a swimming pool just from convenience, and that's where you get a lot of your fitness. You obviously have to transition into the open water as well. And when I do that, it's laps. Do you know how boring it is? At the moment, I'm doing 7-kilometer and 10-kilometer sessions. So you'll have to translate that into miles for me. So it's 280 and 400 laps is what I do every morning. And it takes a long time, and you push off the wall and you do your first lap and you go, okay, 399, 398, and I realize I'm really going to have to get my mind into a place. So I do focus on the why I'm doing it. I am also very motivated by the goals I set in my training. So I know the big goal that I'm currently training for. And in those, you mentioned the English Channel at that time. I mean, the English Channel is like the Everest of open water swims. It's just insane when you were as experienced as I was back then to think of taking on a challenge like the English Channel. 34 kilometers, 21 odd miles of swimming in cold water. In a foreign land in the UK. It's from, for your listeners who don't know, it's from Dover in the UK across to France. It's a very well recognized swim, but it's also known as the Everest of open water swims, and it's very, very difficult for a number of reasons. So I know what that goal is, and I kind of know, I've done the research on how I have to get there to get my body and my mind in the right place. So while I'm doing the hard yards in the training, I'm focused on that. Because if I don't do it, I know I'm falling backwards, and I know I'm not going to be ready for that. So I focus on that. And what's helped massively in more recent years, believe it or not, I'm probably ashamed to admit this, but are these Garmin watches and Strava. A lot of your listeners, I'm sure, will know Strava. And you're in a community of people who are very interested to see what you're doing. So while I'm going, I think, you know what, I'm going to get out on 6Ks. I'm not going to do 7 today. And then you think, no, everyone's going to see that on Strava. I'm going to push.
Exactly.
So I set myself often childish little vanity goals as well, that I want to, whatever works for you. So that's where my thoughts go to. Every now and then I lose my train of thought, and I'm thinking about something work-wise or something personal or whatever it is, and I lose count of the laps, and my watch keeps the count. But I realize that I'm way ahead of where I thought I was, and that's wonderful, but it doesn't happen that often.
Wow. Yeah. And, as I read about it, it was interesting to me. I really hadn't thought about, obviously, when you're swimming for hours and hours out there in the cold water. And by the way, for our listeners, you're not wearing a wetsuit.
No.
Ryan's out there in his Speedos and his goggles. And it hadn't occurred to me that with the food that you need to eat along the way to energize yourself, and the effect that the cold water would have on that food. And I noticed that one of the things that you typically is part of your diet is marshmallows. Now, where does that come from?
Marshmallows, out of all the things you picked out of my book. When you're swimming, and again, I don't want to bore with long, boring answers about nutrition, but it's very different, especially when the diet deal is on the screen.
Nutrition is never boring.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, all right, come on
My
now.
nutrition might be. But when you are a swimmer and you are doing, let's just talk English Channel, because that's where we've been. You're in my case, rough water. So you're up and down, there's movement, you are doing physical exercise. You are lying horizontal as well. Okay. When it comes time to feed, because the English Channel took me 13 hours of solid swimming in the cold water. Once you walk into the water in Dover, you may not touch anything that helps you until you walk out the water in France. You can't hold on the boat or jump on the boat and eat something or get any little rest. So when you are feeding, you need to take that into account. In my case, I'm holding a little Tupperware and had a few little morsels of food in it. And with the other hand, I now need to put that in my mouth. Now, when you got both hands out the water, what happens? You're going to sink. So your legs are now treading like crazy. So, I mean, this is just one example. I can go on forever. But so you need things you can eat that are very easy to eat. That's the first thing. Marshmallows, tick. Secondly, and I say this for the diet diva, you have to have the right fuel and the right food, because what you put in is what you're going to get out. Absolutely no question about that. However, for me, and I preach this to a lot of people who ask my advice, have something that you just like as well. You know, if you're only eating energy bars and eating all the stuff that's good, at some stage you're going to get, well, there's a wonderful South African saying called gatvol, which means enough. You just like, you can't stomach any. So I make sure within my good food selection, I've always got something that I just like, because I know in half an hour they're going to give me 2 marshmallows. I'm going to shove that and it's going to taste so good. It's go down. It's not going to add much, maybe a little sugar spike, but it's not going to do anything great to my endurance. But mentally, it got me to that next feed. So that's why I do marshmallows.
So let's talk logistics too for a second on the nutrition thing. So they're not throwing a bottle to, I mean, because you obviously you have to hydrate as well. And in that bottle, you're going to have your carbohydrates, your electrolytes, your fluid, but that bottle's like on a string. Right?
Correct.
Because again, you can't touch the boat. So they're throwing you a bottle on a string. You're trying to drink that, you know, same thing with your marshmallow. And I'm also thinking, well, in your Tupperware, if a wave comes and your marshmallows go out, they're going to float. So there's another reason to do marshmallows instead of like gummy bears or something.
100%. So they do. And you can pick it out. It doesn't get saturated with salt water, so you can still eat it. So there are a lot of things for marshmallows. But yes, most of the time you are taking liquids. And not eating. You might have a little Snicker bar. But what I learned as well, you know, a lot of people say, oh, you must have a bar one. Imagine all that energy or a Snicker bar. What people don't realize is that when you eat chocolate, your chocolate needs the warmth of your mouth to melt so you can easily swallow it. Otherwise, it just becomes hard toffee. Now, I made that mistake in a cold swim where, and remember also when you feed, you got to stop your swimming. You go from horizontal to vertical. You're treading water. All your blood is mixing. All that cold starts setting in really, really quickly because you're no longer generating heat and the blood is mixing. So your feeds have to be quick, quick, quick. So you literally usually just take the 30 seconds. You squeeze the bottle or get your liquids down. You have one little bite of something and then it's go until the next stop. When you shove a chocolate in your mouth and now you've got 3 minutes of chewing, you can't start swimming because while you're chewing, because you're trying to breathe, you're blocking your mouth. So it sounds ridiculous, but these are all things you got to practice and plan and know. And I found out over many years, you know, what to do and what not to do. And I'm still figuring stuff out. But yeah, marshmallows work for me.
Well, and swimming, you know, you mentioned the breathing. That's one thing that I realized for myself is I would get anxious and panic, which you actually helped me a couple of times in swims that we have done. And I had to get past that in my mind that if you keep panicking, you're not going to be able to breathe, because when you put when you're on land, you can breathe whenever you want. When you're in the water and you put your face in the water, you got to hold your breath. And if you're panicking and your heart is up and you're, then you can't breathe. So tell us a little bit about how you've managed to, like, again, that mindset of it's 56 degrees in Fahrenheit in the English Channel and I'm in a Speedo and walking in Dover and about to start. I'm sure there was a panic that sets in. So how do you get your mindset to that place where, no, I can do this?
Again, English Channel is just such a nice analogy because everyone knows the channel, or everyone kind of heard of it, and it's hard. So when you walk in and you know you're taking your first few strokes of a very, very long day in the office, as I call it, it's exceptionally difficult to get the mind in the right place because the cold is setting in, the muscles aren't loose yet. You might do the first 2 or 3 kilometers or the first 2 miles, and I can guarantee you're going to feel a little bit tired and a little bit too cold, and it's almost impossible for your mind to go, well, I can do this for another 11 and a half, 13 hours. It's nearly an impossibility. So, and you don't have to, but you really should. It helps you to know that beforehand. Okay. When I did the English Channel, the furthest I'd ever swum was in a training swim, which was 20 kilometers, which is about 13 miles. Okay. Now, the next move was to do 21. Now, when I finished those 13 miles, don't think I got out going, oh yeah, I think I can, add a whole
I
bunch
got another
more.
8 in me.
No, you walk out and you are shattered. You're shattered. So it's very hard to. So then you start talking to the people who've done it, and you start questioning it, and you just realize that there is something that's going to happen in your mind that you are going to need to figure out, but you can't figure it out before. You have to figure it out in the moment. And those who figure it out in the moment finish their channels, and those who don't pull out and get on the boat and go home. And that is one of the blessings that I had, because the English Channel was my first really big swim, and I hit that point where I needed, the tank was empty, the mind was finished, and I had to draw on something else to keep me going. Tara, just to answer your question, Granny, if you get into an English Channel situation or any long swim and you are trying to swim to the other side in your head, and you are looking up to see, oh, where's France? You got no chance. You'll be so
Not
miserable.
Gonna see
it. So you box size it, you bite size it. And it's, my mom always just said, just remember every stroke that you pull, you're one stroke closer to France. So keep that in your mind. And another mate did the whole, it's like eating an elephant. You don't jump it down. It's just a little bit. So we generally feed every half an hour. So I knew exactly what my feeds were. And as I said earlier, I made sure in those feeds, in amongst all the stuff that I needed, there was stuff that I liked. So I would use that as my carrot. I've just got to get half an hour and I get a hot chocolate. Wow, it's freezing cold. I'm going to pour this warm stuff down my throat. It's going to feel like a warm blanket. And I almost fantasize about that. And all of a sudden I get to that point. But it's a fascinating thing that happens. And I'm sure this happens across all endurance sports. But swimming, it's very rough. And that is the first, and I did this last weekend, I did another big swim, and once again I found it that you battle in the beginning, the mental games that are playing, the excuses that you're searching for to try and figure out how you can get out of this horrible situation. They are pinging in your head, and it's very hard to actually control them and channel them. But at some point, if you get through that, everything just starts to flow. And I'm sure it is the word flow. When you talk psychology, you find a flow. And those half an hours that you're feeding every half an hour go like this. And you just know as soon as you start getting into a rhythm, all of a sudden they're stopping you for another drink. And time starts to go fast. I lose all track of time. I'm still thinking and I'm concentrating. I'm never bored. I'm just thinking about what I'm doing, how my shoulder's feeling. Oh, there's a niggle. Let's see if I twist my hand a little bit this way. Maybe it'll relieve that. So there's always something happening that makes me think about it. And time starts to fly. Then, you get to the tail end of a big swim and things start to get serious. Now you're depleted. Now there's no way you can turn your arm anymore. Everything hurts, and you're just darn miserable, and you're cold, and you're grumpy, and that's a whole different conversation, because that's the business end that separates many men and ladies from us.
Man, on a related note, Ryan, you often hear coaches and folks who are talking about doing challenging things, and they say that they say you got to get comfortable being uncomfortable, which, frankly, I think that's sort of an oxymoron. I mean, but I think better said is that you have to accept being uncomfortable. And we've got an ultra long distance runner here in the U.S., Courtney DeWalter, and she talks about recognizing that at some point in these races where she's running 100 miles, 200 miles, trail runs, that she's going to enter what she calls her pain cave. She knows it's coming. She accepts it. And when it arrives, she talks about how she visualizes literally being in this cave and chipping away at the wall. How do you handle pain during these really, really long swims?
Well, I love that analogy because I totally, as soon as you say pain cave, I know exactly what she's talking about. And I think how I handle it, sometimes with great difficulty, I'm no different to anybody else. I battle with these things. It depends how badly you want it. But what I want to say is it's about preparation and true to form to this lady. Sorry, I forget her name already.
Courtney.
Yeah, Courtney.
Courtney. To Courtney. Courtney only knows about a pain cave because she's been in it many times.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure the first time she went in it, she ran back out and thought, what the hell was that all about? And then the next time she thought, okay, let's stay a little longer. I'm assuming now, but that's, and she eventually got to a point that she now knows it's coming. And I can do all the training in the world, but it's coming. And it's and that's the mind game. You can only do so much to get your body in the place it needs to be in the training. But, it's again, back to the English Channel. It's very commonly known that it's 30% body and 70% mind. You can do all the training in the world, and you have to, trust me. You're not going to wing it. You need to get yourself in the right place. But it's mental. And it's those mental, the way you can get resilience and that in your head is by doing it over and over and building your way up. Yes, there are exceptions who will jump in and surprise. And those are like not even 0.0001% of people who take this sport or any sport, endurance sport, seriously. If you do the training, if you do the prep work properly, and then there's training and then there's training, right? You start to, I suppose it's a place of, you become familiar with that cave. It's horrible. You never want to be in it. But you get to a point of pain, and generally that's where you plateau. And now it's just how tough can you be to hold that level of pain for how long? If it's getting worse and worse and worse and worse and worse, at some point you're going to have to call it, right? Let's not be stupid about it. But if you get to a level of pain, and no one likes to be in pain, no one likes to be in pain for a long time, and no one likes to be freezing cold and in pain for a long time. And that's where you just got to tell yourself, well, this is the sport. If I want to get to the other side, the reason I'm going to join an extremely elite group of sportsmen who have done it before is because I'm prepared to stay in this cave, and I'm going to understand what's happening, and I'm going to acknowledge that it's not going to get worse. That's the humanness about it. We've got this powerhouse mind that's designed to protect us. It's designed to keep you safe. And when you feel pain, that's a trigger to say, hey, go the other way. That pain that way, go the other way. And your mind doesn't always let you go, oh, well, don't worry, it's going to plateau and you'll be able to handle it. It doesn't let you do that. It just makes you find an excuse to get the hell out of it. And that is very human and very normal, and that's what you need to practice and you need to learn, and most importantly, you need to be aware and understand it, of what's happening and why it's happening. And that's what I've studied quite a lot in the element of cold, and why I can maybe push the boundaries a little bit.
Yeah. Well, and you touched on there's training and then there's training. When I flew with the Blue Angels, you hear growing up, people say practice makes perfect. And frankly, we didn't believe that. We believe that practice makes consistency. So if you're practicing poorly, haphazardly, indifferently, that's the result you're going to get. So what we believed was perfect practice makes perfect. And, you talk about training, and in your book, you talk about the small things. Mm-hmm. Describe your approach to perfect practice in your training.
Yeah, well, you use the word perfect. I don't think I'll ever get perfect. And I amaze myself every single time I train. Even this morning, I did a session in the pool and I learned something. But what to do, what not to do, what's going to happen, what isn't going to happen, what I need to think, what I shouldn't think, how I'm stupid enough to let myself get to that point. There are a million things. And I did a much bigger training session over the weekend. And there are so many little things that are going to change. So I don't believe I don't think I will ever be in a place where I can say, right, I am now perfectly trained to take this thing on, whatever the challenge might be. So I don't know that word perfect has ever factored in my world. But I have learned to train a lot smarter rather than just soldier forward and do as much mileage as you possibly can, which a lot of people still take that approach, because, and it's almost ridiculous. I've had a look what works, what doesn't work, and I've refined my training to a much more narrow band. That still doesn't mean it's perfect, because as I said, I'm still finding things. I'm still feeding on all the swims I've done in the world. I'm still feeding, and Tara, this is your domain. And I know I'm not taking the right stuff sometimes. I know it comes back up. Because remember, again, you're horizontal. So when you feed as a swimmer, it doesn't all go down. You don't have the benefit of gravity to get it down in your gut. It sits here in your throat. And now you're drinking salt water and you're bouncing around. So in swimming, distance swimming, open water anyway, speaking of vomiting is quite a common thing in our game, as disgusting as that is. And it's quite a detrimental thing, because if you don't get your feed right and you can't keep it down, it is generally the end of your challenge.
Yeah, you're getting behind the 8 ball. And because literally when you're swimming like that, we get seasick when we're in a boat. Imagine being in water that's going up and down like that. So Ryan, I want to ask you, I want to go back to that idea of kind of like sitting with the pain. And I want to start to apply this to everyday people who are not swimming in these extreme, which we didn't even get to your Antarctica swim, which was 30 degrees Fahrenheit. That makes the English Channel sound warm, like a hot tub. But
I'll touch on that when you finish this question.
Okay, perfect. Everybody got on this whole, ice bath thing, in the last couple of years, and sitting in an ice bath, and how long can you stay in it? And, people were happy to stay in it for 2 minutes, and it's 50 degrees. And, here you are talking about being in that water for 13 hours. And I hate cold water. Hate cold. I hate being cold. So for me, I got in that stupid thing because I wanted to train my brain. Because there's, that part of your brain that the more you train to be in discomfort, to be in pain, not necessarily pain, but discomfort, I would call it, doing something that you don't want to do, that helps to build that area of your brain so that when life's challenges come, when you're put into an uncomfortable situation, not on purpose, now you have that training, you have your brain, that side of your brain built up to say, oh yeah, I can do this because I've done these other things and I've trained for this.
Yeah, 100%. So you are touching on what I want to bring into from the real cold. So English Channel's cold. I've obviously gone to the extreme to really test colder and colder and colder and colder. So you talk about train your brain to feel, to accept something that's horrible. And that is true, but it's also the word familiarity, awareness on how your brain works in those environments is, in my opinion, what you are really doing. So when us humans have not evolved well to handle cold, we've evolved very well to avoid it. So when we throw ourselves into cold water, the body and the mind does everything it possibly can to get us out. Okay, so the pain, panic, and fear come along, and they come together in a split second. It accentuates self-doubt, and all you can think of is, this is horrible. Brain is telling me I'm in danger. If I stay in this environment, I'm dead. Get out. And that doesn't happen in the front of your brain consciously. That happens subconsciously, and all you find yourself is like, hell no, I'm out. Right? Now, the more you do, and that's absolutely normal. Okay, so in my world, and why I'm blessed to go around the world sharing wonderful stories and keynotes with really powerful messaging, is because I chose to go back in and back in and back in over and over and colder and push a little bit further, because I started to understand what was going on inside my head. Okay, there's this Robben Island we spoke about earlier. That is the Everest of swimming to many people. People do it once, that's it, boom, certificates on the wall. I've done it 145 times now, right? So it became, in my journey, it's become a training swim for me. And it's a brilliant training swim because it's really hard. But now I go there and I go back in one swim. So it's really, the platform is a lot higher. But why I'm telling you this story is because on every single one of those 145 Robben Island crossings in the cold water in my Speedo, Got a little rubber duck alongside me, making sure I don't die. I'm not allowed to touch it, but it's going to throw me my feed and keep me safe if something does go wrong. On every single one of those crossings, no matter how much I know I can make it to the beach, and I know I've done it many times before, all I can think of was, how can I get out of this cold water and into that warm support boat where I can wrap a blanket around me and sip my hot chocolate? And I started to question myself because I was so irritated that I can't think of anything. I can only think of excuses. And I always say this in my keynotes as well. It's always a bit funny, I bet, because everyone's always a little bit in awe of the South African waters. Now, I'm always wondering, does he see sharks? Now, let me tell you, cold water swimmer in South Africa in a Speedo sometimes prays for a shark, because if the support crew see a fin anywhere close to me, they are going to pull me out of that water without any argument, and I won't have a choice in it. And there I will wrap a blanket around me, and it won't be my fault. No one's going to snarl at me, what a great excuse. So sometimes I'm so miserable that I'm praying for something to happen that won't be me making the decision to get out. And that's what fascinated me, because I know I can make it to the beach. So why am I, all I can think of is getting out? And I started to analyze a little bit, and I realized it is just this unbelievably powerful defense mechanism that we all have that says, you're in a cold environment, you need to get out now. Now, I'm not the inspirational speaker who goes around the world saying anything you put your mind to is possible. I'm not that guy. I'm a little bit more rooted in reality, I like to think. In the cold water, I can guarantee you, either you are going to warm the ocean up to your temperature, or it's going to cool you down, right? That's science. Those are the two outcomes. So we know what's going to happen. However, where your brain is telling you it's time to get out is not where it's time to get out. And that's the key. So where your mind is saying it's the end point, Ryan, no more, you can't go past this, you'll be stupid to go past this, go back to comfort on that side of the line. That's the bad decision. There's no growth. No growth. Underachievement. Safe. Comfort zone. Delivering. Putting food on the table. Everyone would have gone clap, clap. Well done. You did another swim. But on this side of the line, dabbling between the mind's endpoint and the real endpoint, that's where the magic happens. And I started to figure that out. And I started to understand these processes, which taps back to what you're saying, Tara. You started to be comfortable. I hate the cold as well. I'm a cold water swimmer. I've made a career out of it, but I don't like the cold. It's been a classroom for me. It has taught me so much about myself and what I'm able to overcome and how I'm able to understand and I suppose to a degree control my thoughts. So when I get that thought of, I'm out, finished, I stop dead and I think about it. Why are you saying that, Ryan? Really? Are you dying, pal, or are you just very uncomfortable and want to get out? And then this very uncomfortable and want to get out, is it escalating? Is it going to kill you? No, it's not. You can do this for another couple of hours, just man up and off you go. So these are the narratives happening in my head, and they wouldn't be able to happen in my head if I hadn't figured out how powerful this human mind is, but not to send us forward when the going gets tough, rather to send you in the opposite direction to say, hey, quit, don't do this, pal. Get out, stay safe. Stay safe. That's what we designed to do. And most people survive a wonderful life of never knowing anything different. And just by default and by a blessing, I suppose, I have figured out to a degree. I've got a long journey ahead of me to learn more about it, but it has completely changed my world and, what I think I'm capable of. And I've proved that to myself and hopefully a little bit to the world as well.
Yeah. And I'm sure, with your keynotes and the people that you work with and so forth, you're inspiring many, many people to get off the couch and to get out there. What have been some examples of that people have gotten back to you that they've accomplished based on your inspiration?
Oh, I actually want to write an entire book about this because firstly, it is such a blessing for me to be in that position, to be able to inspire people to achieve or move towards their goals or take the first step or whatever I action. But a lot of it is in the sporting world, people who never thought they wanted to take a swim or do a marathon or whatever, that motivates them. A lot of it is in the corporate environment. in management, in leadership, in decisions, in entrepreneur space and all of that. I work a lot with those people. But the ones that really stand out for me, I remember after a keynote, a lady who was very pregnant came to me. She was in the audience and she said, you know what? She has always wanted to give natural birth and has always pictured herself giving natural birth, but she has a cesarean booked for, I think it was 3 weeks or so means time, because she's just decided that, she can't go through with it. She's going to cancel that and she's going to give natural birth. And
Whoa.
3 weeks later, a month later, whatever it was, I got a picture and a WhatsApp of her with her baby and saying thank you. So that's like, I'm like, wow. And another one, I did a keynote in Dallas recently for a big audience, 1,000 plus. And quite often what happens after the keynotes, there's a long line of people who want to come and say hello and tell me their story and relate something or ask a question. And I could see in amongst this queue, there was this big cowboy, the big cowboy hat on. For South African, that's still like a novelty. And I thought, I wonder what he's going to ask me, or he's probably going to tell me if he's done a lot better. And as he got closer to me, I could see he was emotional, and there were tears in his eyes, and his lip was quivering a little bit. And I thought, oh, hang. And he had been on a weight loss journey, and he had gotten really far with it, and he just hit a plateau, and he couldn't go further. He could not break through that. And he said, what he saw from me today, my swimming stories, and what I've taught him about the mind is just teeing him up to be able to take the next step. And he was like emotional about it. So it's little things like that. And I can go on. There's so many. But yeah, so those are the ones that really touch me.
That's wonderful. And, your book, you describe how you progressed through setting goals and then going out, and you achieved each one of those. I was interested in hearing about, the times that you failed. And I saw at the end of the book that's going to be your next book is about that. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, of course. So failure, my book, I have had lots of success. I'm really lucky, and it's through planning and preparation and training and luck. But also being a little bit tough and hard-assed about it, and pushing some boundaries and being a little bit brave. So I give myself a little bit of street cred. But there have been plenty of failures. And what you're referring to, I wanted to write a book, and maybe still will, called Failing Forward. And I've actually developed a whole really cool keynote. I call it Failing Forward or Beyond the Summit. And the premise of that is that along with repeated success, when you have success after success after success, like I was blessed to be having in my earlier stages, there's a whole bunch of things that are happening. One, you're probably not setting goals big enough. The goals that you're setting might look big to everyone else. Okay.
Great point.
They look big to everyone else. You'll sell it to everyone else as you've got this massive goal or this massive target in business or whatever. But if you have got a roadmap on how to hit that big goal, this has got to happen, then you're going to do that, then you're going to do that. Blah, if you've got a roadmap to it, that's a comfort zone goal. No matter how big it is or how difficult it is or how many hours of work it takes, if you know how you're going to achieve it, it's a comfort zone goal. I want you to set the goals that you don't think you can achieve. What's one notch higher? Okay, and you don't have to do something stupid and endanger yourself, but the one you're too scared to set because actually you don't know. There's no roadmap, because that's the one's going to make you vulnerable. It's going to make you innovative, and it's going to 100% deliver growth. Okay, fail or succeed. So that's the one thing. You're also not pioneering, but far more important to this conversation, when you're having all this success, along with that comes natural complacency, an element of complacency. Along with it comes loss of discipline. It starts to slide a little bit. In my case, do I need to do another one of those ice baths? Oh, I hate those things. Do I need to go do another medical and do a stress ECG with all those things stuck on me? I did it the other day. I'm fine. Do I need to go do that last training session? I'm fit. What's another 10 kilometers? No, you know what? Good to go. All these little things start to slide. Maybe even a little bit of laziness, a little bit of arrogance, expectation. I know I'm going to succeed because I always do. And that is so dangerous. And that happened to me. And I set myself the challenge of trying to swim from Ireland to Scotland across the North Channel, where the English Channel is your qualifying swim for the North Channel. So it's the same distance, but it's currents are crazy, and it's really cold, and I'm not really designed to handle cold well. I understand it. And off I went, and long story short, I contracted something called SIPE, which is swimming-induced pulmonary edema. And 6.5 hours into that swim, I very nearly died. And that, there's a lot of debate around that, whether it's a good thing or not. I'm so trained to go through hardship, to push myself, to know that I'm going to feel terrible, that pain cave, that I need to fight through it, that unfortunately it all worked against me in this case, because even though I knew something was terribly wrong, I just thought, well, this is, you're 6.5 hours in freezing cold water. You've still got another 6.5 hours to go if you're going to get anywhere close to Scotland. Push. And I had the crew on the boat who know me by reputation, and they didn't want to fail, and they were screaming at me to push harder. And unfortunately, what I didn't know is my lungs were filling up with water, and I was losing oxygen to the brain, and I had no ability to pull. My arms were becoming jelly, and all of a sudden I just blanked out, and that was a big failure. And later, obviously when I was brought back around on the boat, I realized that I'd failed that swim, hadn't made it. And where this keynote goes is not so much about the failure. It is about the mismanagement of that failure. Because what did I do as a red-blooded South African male? Do you think I went all introspective and, tried to figure it out? No. I swept it neatly under the carpet and I set a bigger goal, and off I went, balls to the wall for this. Forget that, it was blamed everything. Blamed the weather, blamed the cold, blamed the crew, blamed everything I could find. Blamed my bad fees. And I won't bore you too long with it, but eventually I obviously set a bigger goal. But for some reason, it took me 3 years to stand on the shore and to launch myself into that new goal. Did all the training, talked the big talk, put the crew in place, got my body into bulletproof shape, got my mind ready. But when the stars aligned for me to go walk down and stand on that shore and dive in and give it a go, could not do it. And I didn't know that I couldn't do it. I would find an excuse not to do it. So all those things I talked about were happening in my head. And again, long story short, and a wonderful process that I take everyone through, eventually I had to sit down and go, okay, what's going on here? Something, I've done all these big swims, yet I can't get this right. And I was, my reputation, my ego was hurt. Everyone was talking like, Ryan's not the guy who does the big swims. He talks about big swims now, But again, very important to the whole thing is during this time of what I call treading water and not achieving, I was achieving great swims. I did like 20 Robben Islands in 1 year, which is insane. I did the Bonifacio Strait. I swam from Italy to France. I did a whole bunch of things. Everyone patting me on the back going, wow, this guy's just amazing. But deep down, I knew everything I was doing was well within my comfort zone. Nothing outside the box at all. And I knew that. And eventually I got to a point so low that I had to actually sit down and figure it out. And again, I worked it all the way back to that North Channel and how I had totally mismanaged failure. So here's my summary. Sorry, this has gone on a bit long.
Oh, that's great.
Everyone knows that failure is part and parcel of growth, and every successful entrepreneur out there has had more failures than he or she's had success. We all know these very true cliches. However, what I have never heard before, and what I now preach around the world, is there are two kinds of failure. Not all failure is good. If you have the kind of failure and you don't go introspective and you don't acknowledge, you don't actually make an effort, a physical effort to figure out what could I have done differently. Even if I don't believe there's anything, even if there are plenty people to blame or other things to blame or COVIDs that happened and things like that, what could I have done differently? Even the tiniest thing that might have changed that outcome. Because only when you do that, even if you don't find anything, only when you do that can you get growth out of failure. And that's the good kind. That's the failure that allows you to stand on a new platform when you're setting your new goal, and with all the arsenal of what you've figured out went wrong with that last one. But so many of us just shove it under the carpet and soldier forward. Or we quit and never try again.
Yeah.
Wow. I think that's our mic drop moment right there.
There you go.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Ryan, I'm going to give you the last word to our listeners to give them your last little piece of advice to be undaunted. But George, what reflecting back to the conversation we just had with Ryan, what's your key takeaway?
Oof, well, this has been amazing, Ryan. Thanks very much. I certainly take away that your message that humans are wired to seek comfort, that our brain's designed to keep us safe, but to achieve our full potential, we have to push outside the comfort zone from time to time. And as our good friend Jim Lair likes to say, no discomfort, no growth. So this conversation has reminded me that I got to get off the couch and go out and do some hard shit from time to time to grow and build the confidence that you talked about, right? That I can deal with uncertainty and adversity, and that's the path to become truly undaunted.
Yeah.
Love that. Love that. Yeah.
Love
similar
that.
for me is I'm not going to do it with cold water swimming, but to find that in your life of what scares you, where do you think failure is possible? And I'm going to take that, what do we call them? The big, hairy, audacious goals, right? I'm going to take that on. And if I fail, that's okay, because I'm going to learn from that. If I'm smart, I'll learn from that, right? Because that's what Ryan said is, you just failing is not the lesson. It's the introspection around, taking that forward. So, so thank you. So what are your last words for our viewers?
Find the goal that you don't think you can achieve. Don't just set the goals you know you can achieve. No matter how daunting they are, that is keeping you inside a comfort zone, and you might be quite happy there. That's up to you. But if you want growth, and you want to really see what you're about, and you really want to know what's potential, and you want a whole different journey in life, maybe you won't get a whole different journey, but I promise you the growth is, what if we don't have growth as humans, what do we have? So I challenge everyone, find your own classroom. Tara, this is what you were saying in a different way. Don't jump in cold water. That's not your thing. That's my classroom. I don't like it. It has taught me so much, and I like pushing my boundaries in the element of cold. Took me all the way to Antarctica in 30 Fahrenheit, where I swam the first official mile there and survived it somehow, longer than anyone should have. And, I learned so much about myself. Last thing is, try and understand what is happening in your mind. Your mind is the most powerful tool ever. Everyone knows that. That's been killed to death by us inspirational speakers. But listen to what I'm saying now. This powerhouse mind of yours is not trying to propel you forward when the going gets tough, or when you're in a difficult situation, or when there is a scary goal ahead. It is driving you in the opposite direction to keep you safe. And that's not always a bad thing, but be aware that that's happening and manage it, because it's a little bit overzealous, a lot overzealous actually. And what you are capable of is so much more. I'm living proof. I am the most average Joe you'll ever come across. Promise you. But I have somehow gone on this epic journey, and I love being a salesman. I'll always be a salesman, but now I go around the world selling a keynote and selling a concept, and hopefully selling a little bit of what we've discussed today to you. In your own worlds, figure out what applies.
Amazing.
Terrific.
Ryan Stramrood, everybody, thank you so much for joining us. His book, again, is called Push Past Impossible. We will, of course, link to Ryan's website and his book in our show notes. And as always, we would love if you could follow or subscribe for free at Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you are listening right now.
All right. And see everybody next time. In the meantime, be undaunted.